Okay, guys, welcome back to the On the Trail podcast. I am Nick, host with my co-host Will Fuller. We have a big time guest today. Introduce yourself, Noah.
Noah. Noah Dzik underscore on Twitter. I work for Touchdown Alabama magazine. Go check me out.
And of course, today we'll be talking about the biggest news in college football: Nick Saban retiring, the GOAT gone from the sport. His first reactions. What is everybody's thoughts?
It's obviously groundbreaking. No one kind of expected it to happen this season. It was kind of, well, maybe Will did. But I know a majority of college football fans didn't expect it to happen this season. Kind of came out of nowhere in the afternoon, yesterday, or I guess when y'all see this 2 days ago. It's crazy, man. It's the best coach of all time, taking a step back. Definitely, definitely built this program back up to a place where it can be considered a blue blood, considered a good job, considered a place where can get a lot of interest from a lot of top head coaches. Obviously, there's going to be the concern of, following in Saban's footsteps, and always going to be a hard thing to do. But I think Alabama ended up getting their guy. But obviously, this is a huge move, and this is uh, absolutely crazy because it's all. I mean, all we've known is Nick Saban when it comes to Alabama football.
For information, me and Noah are lifelong Bama fans. Will is a Georgia fan, so he was probably pretty excited. All we know is Nick Saban at Bama. That's all most of the college football world knows is Nick Saban at Bama.
Mm-hmm.
And he meant so much for the state. Alabama was in, I'm not going to say we were in bad, but the program was not in a great place when he took over.
No, it was pretty bad. It was
It
pretty
was
bad.
pretty bad. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And he took it over, and of course, he built the greatest dynasty we've ever seen, maybe in sports history, to be honest with you. Because, I mean, rattled off 6 national titles that Alabama had, one at LSU,
The Bulls is
nine
better because they
SEC,
did it in less time.
huh?
That's the only thing. Bulls did it in less time, same amount, less time.
Fair. 9 SEC championships. Just he had what's the number? 14 more first round draft picks and losses at
he
Bama, which
had
is an
he had
absolute.
he had 42 first round draft picks, or 42 or 44, and 29 losses.
That is insane,
It's
crazy
ridiculous.
numbers. Well, as a Georgia fan, can I get your reaction?
My reaction was I was surprised, not that he retired, but how suddenly he retired. Just
That's
the fact
good.
that he interviewed a candidate for DC and outside linebacker coach, or I think it was just outside linebacker coach, the morning that he retired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that was very surprising to me that he interviewed the guy and then retired. But Noah just hinted at it a little bit. You did too. Ben was in such a bad place when Saban took over the program, and he just elevated and improved the job so much that it's now a top six. I would say it's a top six job in college football. And yes, it's going to be hard to follow Saban, but there's not a lot of programs out there that have the potential to match the resources of Bama.
No.
And with that juggernaut of a job coming open, like everybody's talking about how big it would be if the Michigan job comes open.
Bama's even bigger.
Bama's so much bigger. And the reason we decided to talk about the Alabama coaching search before the national title game is just it affects so much more than that national championship game does, because a win or a loss for either of those teams will not affect recruiting as much as whoever lands at this job will. And recruiting is more than 75% of the sport.
100%.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
go
sorry.
ahead, Noah.
No, I agree with Will. Just completely elevated the job, and you got to think, like, no matter who Saban's successor is, for lack of better words, he has some big cojones coming into this job and taking
Oh,
over, because I mean, you have to be a bold, really confident coach to come in and take over Alabama after Nick Saban retires. So regardless of who it is, I think Alabama fans should appreciate the fact that this coach is willing to come in here and do that. I thought I would just throw that out there.
All right. And of course,
And
go ahead, Will.
one more thing. Alabama fans also need to be patient.
Mm-hmm. I think the reason a lot of them aren't patient is just due to
the roster.
The
they don't know
roster
anything
things.
else.
Exactly. They don't know anything else other than Saban. They've never gone through this before, so it's kind of hard to be like, hey, you gotta sit back and just relax. Like it's kind of hard to do that as a Bama fan. But you also gotta I understand a little bit of the panic just with the roster. There's a lot of guys that, could leave, a lot of big time guys, starters, future stars that could leave. So it's definitely very tense down there right now. A lot of people are still debating their futures with the program, all that. So we'll just have to see. I feel like we'll see something in the next 24 hours, though.
All right, I guess that's perfect segue into basically who is going to be the next head coach of Alabama football. It's been reported the main candidates have been. This has been the only thing that's been consistent is Mike Norvell, Kalen DeBoer at Washington. I've heard.
Before you talk about that, real quick, I think Bama did the right thing by calling Dan Lanning, calling Steve Sarkisian, and calling D'Amico Ryans and making those guys say no.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know if Steve said no yet.
I don't know if Steve has said. I think he might have said no once, but I think they're still talking to him. But I don't know.
Agree.
I don't know. I think.
All right. He said no once. We'll see if he says no twice. But that was the right move. Those were the best three guys for the job. Like you weren't getting Kirby.
No one's
getting like Kirby wasn't happening.
Kirby.
The next three best guys.
Yeah.
You had to make them say no, and they did the right thing by doing that.
I know for an absolute fact that Sark is number one on Saban's list. I know that's who Saban wants. Mm-hmm. I know Lanning's probably right after that, and then I think it's followed by DeBoer and Norvell. Obviously, the whole Kiffin thing was weird. There was a bunch of rumors, but then there was also they're not going to let him come, regardless of him wanting to come. I think if Alabama asked Kiffin, he would be there on a plane in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
So, but anyways.
But that's the right thing to do.
I agree.
Offering Lane Kiffin the job.
Yeah.
And I know it came out that Dabo Swinney has the Alabama clause in his contract.
I don't think he was ever in play.
Dabo Swinney, there's a reason that came out. And the reason that came out is because Dabo Swinney was never in consideration for the job, not because of the buyout that he said is $150 million, so I'm going to believe him. But for the fact that Dabo is not willing to change his ways, and he will constantly, no matter where he is, field about 15 to 20 players on his roster that can't compete for a national championship. You cannot play them. They're scout team players. And that's just because of the way he is.
Yeah, I agree with Will. You gotta oh, sorry, you still going?
No, you're good.
Here's the thing. So Saban and Dabo, in my opinion, they were sort of similar in their mindset about they didn't like the whole all this with NIL. They liked that players can make money, but they didn't like how it was being used. The transfer portal, they didn't like it. So Saban didn't fully go full transfer portal, full NIL, but he slowly moved that way. He was slowly going that way. Dabo didn't budge. Dabo didn't budge really at all. So now Alabama's looking, well, Alabama had Saban. Saban was the number one recruiting pitch to these recruits. Number one recruiting pitch. So if Saban's pitching himself, Saban's pitching his history, his track record, everything, you're not going to have Saban now. That's the thing. So you need to hire a guy, and this is going off Will saying it's not going to be Dabo, which I agree with. You need to hire a guy that's willing to change, willing to do all these NIL funds, willing to go to the transfer portal, willing to,
make their offense.
Exactly. So it's not going to be a guy like Dabo who isn't willing to change his ways.
Like one of the things that kind of struck me this year is like they went out and hired Garrett Riley. Everybody thought it was a splash hire, including me, including Will, including you probably too, Noah.
Well,
at offensive coordinator. But when you watch it on the field, nothing really changed about the Clemson offense.
It did in the second half of the season. So
A little bit. It wasn't a whole lot though.
I I think we need to wait till next year to fully judge what Garrett
I
Riley's.
think
I'm not judging Garrett Riley. I'm judging. I think Dabo is putting more say into the offense than he needs to.
And we'll
there,
find that out here.
there's that. I also think there was a very big lacking of playmakers in that wide receiver room, tight
I
end
do agree
room.
with that.
And you know what?
Shipley was good, but he was a little inconsistent down the stretch. Got hurt.
And he was injury prone.
It was just a mess.
And look,
I really don't think Klubnik's that bad, to be honest with you.
I don't either.
One speedy slot receiver fixes that offense.
Yep.
They got Stellato. They never used him, and he was good when he played.
Yeah.
Troy Stellato is one of the fastest players in the country. If you look at like track times and stuff like that from high school, and he was good when he got on the field, but he just never played.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
Segue into
So,
two leading candidates that have been talked about the most is Kalen DeBoer and Mike Norvell. How do we feel about them two?
Both of you, I think, y'all did mention recruiting earlier in the show when you said this is one of the things you need to be good at to win at Alabama. And it is.
Yes, because Bama's not a program that you build through the portal at. Bama's a program you build through the recruiting cycle and then add through the portal like Saban did.
And the reason you do that is because when you add certain incremental pieces through your roster with the transfer portal, that's fine. But if you're building your entire team off the transfer portal, you don't have any depth on your roster because you're not valuing high school recruiting, and you can't find offensive tackles and defensive linemen in the NFL draft. So
exactly,
the two leading candidates right now are Mike Norvell and Kellen DeBoer. His name slipped my mind for a second. Mike Norvell has somehow, I don't know how he's done it, but he has. He's gotten 3 great edge rushers out of the transfer portal. Who else has?
I think edge rushers are easier to find than like interior defensive linemen, though.
They are. They're not as big.
Agreed. Edge rushers are a lot easier.
But then again, he did.
Well, edge rushers are a lot easier.
He did hit the jackpot with 3 edge rushers.
And Fisk.
In his time at Florida State.
And Braden Fisk.
He also hit the jackpot with a bunch of receivers, a bunch of defensive players, and that's the reason they were 13-0 this year. But I just don't think
you can't
sustain it.
Well,
yeah. Think about this. What do you think? What do you under Norvell with their roster? What do you think Florida State goes next year?
Right now, well, they've landed DJ, they've landed Benson, they have Hakeem.
I go 9-3.
I'm worried about their linebackers. They have a terrible schedule. I'm gonna actually say, I think they go 11-1. I think Marvin Jones Jr. hits.
I do too. I do think he's a very good pickup.
I think Marvin and Earl both hit. Yeah, I'm
gonna go 9-3.
I think Norvell also had a huge advantage being in the state of Florida, recruiting wise. I think that was also big for him. He'll obviously have great talent in Alabama, but let's be 100% honest here. Who consistently has more talent, Alabama or Florida, high school wise? It's Florida. Right. So,
and also a small note, hiring Patrick Surtain boosted his recruiting so much this year.
Especially with DBs.
Yeah. He's not leaving Florida State for Bama. Nope. I know his son went there, but they showed Patrick Surtain in the stands at Tuscaloosa wearing his son's jersey and a Florida State hat.
I agree. I also think go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I don't think Surtain DB coach. And I don't think that's a guy. I don't think that's a guy you want to bring on as a DC because I don't think he would be I'm not trying to take a crap on him, but I just don't think he would be a good DC.
Look, he's been a good DB coach for him.
Yeah, he's a good DB coach.
He's why Charles Lester picked Florida State over Bama.
Yeah.
Over who?
That guy's staying at Florida State, and Norvell's successor there would keep that guy on staff.
Yeah.
And The problem is he was Norvell's lead recruiter on most of the kids in the state of Florida. Where Norvell struggled to recruit, I know they were terrible, and I know it wasn't Norvell's fault they were terrible, but he did struggle to recruit in the state of Florida. And even when those teams are bad, they still recruit in state. Like they don't get the top end elite guys, but Norvell's struggling to recruit that next tier that the three big schools in Florida seem to always land.
Here's what I'm thinking of. You got to think about this too. So don't give a long explanation. Just give me the name. Who do you think is a better recruiter in this current state, Billy Napier or Hugh Freeze? Just answer the question.
Hugh Freeze.
Alabama, or
do you think Hugh Freeze is a better recruiter or Billy Napier is a better recruiter?
Hugh Freeze. I think it's pretty easy too.
I'm gonna go Hugh Freeze too.
I don't think that Norvell could go into Alabama and out recruit Hugh Freeze year after year.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't happen. I don't think he could do it. And over the past years, the majority of Alabama's talent has come from in-state. A lot of it's come from Florida too. And now he won't be in Florida recruiting against guys that he was losing recruiting battles to while in Florida. So it's just the brand is there. The A is still going to recruit somewhat.
Recruit itself a little bit.
A little, not as much as it used to.
No.
Over the past 10 years, Alabama high school football coaches have upgraded, and they're taking these raw athletes that used to just go to Auburn when Nick Saban was recruiting so nationally. They've taken those raw athletes that went to Auburn and became great players, and they've turned them into better players right off the bat, and that just upgrades their potential at the next level in college. And Auburn is still landing those guys. And if you're the next coach of Alabama, you need somebody that keeps those players, all of those players, from going to Auburn. And I just don't think Norvell is that guy.
You got to do that, but you also got to get some of the guys that are already high end, the already high 4-star, 5-star guys, not just the raw guys too, because you can't let those
are the guys I'm talking about. I'm just saying the state of Alabama has upgraded their coaching so much.
You can't go 3 for 10 with some of the top guys in Alabama. You can't
not at the University of Alabama. You can't do that.
No, I promise you, if he does
get
that,
ran out of town very fast.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah, and
that was fine. It was fine if you went 3 for 10 with the top guys in state. You just picked the guys that were the best fit for your program. But now, those guys are getting recruiting nationally. Like Oregon's came in and got players from Alabama. Florida gets players from Alabama all the time. FSU gets players from Alabama. Georgia takes players from Alabama. Like the talent in the state has gone so much up that now that Auburn is good, they're going to start landing these guys, like I said earlier. And if Alabama doesn't match that, Auburn's going to outpace them, and that's not going to turn out well.
I also want to say this too. You got to be able to, at Alabama, you got to be able to go into Texas. You got to be able to go into Georgia. You got to be able to go into Florida. You got to be able to go to all these big states and get talent, whether it be one guy, two guys. It doesn't matter to me, but you have to be able to do that. Obviously, a lot of that comes with assistant coaches. But I guess that's one of the other interesting things. If you hired Norvell, you got to retain a guy like T-Rob. You got to retain a guy like Gillespie. You can't let those guys leave. You got to make a good wide receiver coach hire. Got to hire a good outside linebackers coach. You need to mostly when you're hiring this receivers coach and this outside linebackers coach, you obviously want to hire a guy that you're comfortable with, but you got to hire a guy that players want too, especially right now because you have a lot of players that are looking at that portal. You have a lot of players who are like,
getting money offers too.
However, if you bring a guy in a guy in that's notable, credible, and whoever, we know this, it's not a fact, but we know that the university, the athletic department, is going to fund this new coach. They're going to get him on his feet. They're going to fund them. I have my own theories about, Saban being a little bit of a booster at some point, and I think that's going to end up happening one day. But it's going to be interesting. I mean,
Also another thing, Saban didn't utilize Bama's full NIL potential.
No,
not one
we
bit,
all
not
know
one bit.
that.
And the thing is, he didn't want to, and he didn't have to. This new
No, 'cause
coach is
he's
going to
Saban.
have to. This new coach is going to have to because he isn't Saban.
So
I do want to.
that's the next point I was going to get to. Actually, he's going to have to utilize that full NIL potential. So I think you have to get somebody who's comfortable with doing that.
You know, there are Norvell's comfortable with it. I
Norvell's comfortable with it. So is DeBoer, which are the two.
Is DeBoer though?
We'll transition to DeBoer.
We'll transition to DeBoer. This will be
yes. Keep going.
DeBoer is willing to do it, but he doesn't want to. Yeah, like that's my take on DeBoer.
And I think that's a problem. I think that might be a problem personally.
And another problem with DeBoer is exactly what we said about Mike Norvell. But he's worse.
You know how many times he's coached in the South?
Zero
times. He's been in the Midwest. He's been out West, which being out West could end up being beneficial, but it doesn't matter if you can recruit out West but can't recruit the South. You're not going to pull guys at Alabama out West consistently away from teams like Oregon or USC. And now Arizona. That's just not going to happen, right? And then Oklahoma gets their guys out West. Texas does too. Anyways, you're not going to pull those guys consistently.
And Georgia has hired Damani Jackson, who all the modern day players love.
You mean?
Not Damani Jackson. That's the corner.
Dante.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, that threw me off. Yes. And DeBoer has zero connections in the Southeast that I know of, that I've been told of. And I think y'all could stand with that too. He's going to have these assistant coaches, but they're not going to be there forever, right? So, I mean, it's just if I had to pick between Norvell and DeBoer, truthfully, I would pick Norvell on a pure recruiting standpoint. From a pure coaching standpoint, I think it's DeBoer. However, as Will said earlier, at Alabama, I believe you said 75% of winning is recruiting. Therefore, I think if you're picking between those two,
because Norvell's not that bad of a fall off coaching wise.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a fall off coaching wise, but look what he did.
I also think Norvell could retain more of the roster than DeBoer could.
Here's another thing that I think about. How much of their own staff are they going to try to bring? Because Washington.
And here's the thing. I don't want Washington staff because there's no connections there. None. I'd much rather bring someone from Florida State.
Unless it's Jamarcus Shepard. I would take Jamarcus Shepard in a heartbeat. The receivers coach at Washington, I'd take him. But other than that, dude.
And I saw someone try to compare, well, even though Kellen DeBoer doesn't have connections, neither did Brian Kelly. And that's just not true. Brian Kelly's recruited the South.
Brian Kelly's been in the game a lot longer than DeBoer has.
And he's recruited the South since he's been at Cincinnati. He went into Tennessee, he went into Georgia, he went into Florida.
It's not the same situation. Where did DeBoer DeBoer was at Fresno State before Washington.
He was at Fresno State. He was at Indiana for a little bit.
Indiana, Fresno State. Well, yeah.
And then a D2 school, I forget what it was.
Yeah. And respectfully, you don't have the connections. Now, here's a guy that me and Will have talked about off record that I personally would like. Most people would disagree with me heavily. I wouldn't mind giving Glenn Schumann, the DC of Georgia, a chance. I think if anybody's going to retain the most roster, I think it'd be Schumann.
I have a question. Do we cuss on this podcast?
I mean, we could let one slip every once in a while, but just talking like we normally do.
Okay, I'll keep it PG. It would be bold as hell to do it. However, I think I would be on board with it.
Me personally, I believe Schumann is the next. I think he's the next guy. I do, and I think we need to get ahead of the curve We're not getting Lanning. That's been Dan Lanning's not
Yes,
coming to Alabama.
yes.
I don't
I think
think we're gonna get Stark. I think it could happen,
here's the thing
but
with Schumann. He knows the South. He's a very good defensive mind, and I feel like he would bring some damn good assistance with
and
him.
he's from, and you know what? A big
Look,
part.
From
He literally
Alabama,
is from Alabama.
and he's
he
intense.
he started his student assistant career in 08. Watched Saban build the machine at Alabama. He watched as a GA. He watched Saban
Dominate.
reorganize his offense into with Lane Kiffin and all that. He came to Georgia, watched Kirby build the machine. He watched Kirby revitalize and retool his offense into becoming national championship caliber level.
He's next up,
He's
man.
seen,
He's next.
he knows recruiting in the South very well. Grew up an Alabama fan.
Great recruiter.
Yes, year one might be a struggle, but then in year two, it's also year two is saying he'll be able to retain the staff. He'll be able to retain the young players. He'll bring in a good class.
He knows that. I have a feeling he's a young, old school coach that will bring in high school players and then fill the needs with the portal if he needs to.
Yes.
I think that's what he'll do. I
think
think he'll open up the NIL more than Saban, just because that's something he's going to
He's
have.
younger too. He's younger.
He's also him and Kirby disagree a lot on NIL. And if anyone is familiar with the Georgia NIL situation, you'll get that that's a good thing for post Saban Alabama.
Yeah. No. I'm just going to throw this out there completely, like, overall coaching. I love, like, there's obviously these options. Like, I like Schumann. I'm okay with Norvell DeVore. I'm kind of on the fence about. I just have a really strange feeling it's going to be someone we're not talking about. However, if you just with the history of Greg Byrne, I just feel like it's going to be a weird hire.
What if it's Jetfish? Burns.
I view Jetfish as a better recruiter than Norvell and DeBoer, to be honest with you.
I agree.
I think he's a good offensive mind.
Does he have connections? Does he have connections here though? Is that
he graduated from Florida?
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. Do you think he want to wait out for the Florida job?
Well, I don't know. You might be right, actually. If it goes
Napier,
actually with their schedule, it might go downhill fast this year.
Yeah.
Anyways, like I was saying, I think it could be someone totally out of left field. However, if you put a gun to my head right now, I would say DeVore. Gun to the head, I'd say DeVore. However, I am nowhere near confident in that. Nobody knows. Not a single soul knows besides Saban, Greg Byrne, and maybe a guy like T. Rob or Roach. Maybe.
I also another thing. We're Bama fans, but I'm keeping this as unbiased as possible. I am, because this is a college football podcast that I want to cover the whole country. The number one thing this coach needs to do when he comes in here, whoever it is, keep T-Rob. Whatever you got to do.
Because that keeps Caleb Downs.
Yep.
Keep T-Rob, and you got to focus on keeping this roster together. Bama's junior days are 20. I think a hire will be made by tomorrow. Personally, I do. I think the hire has already kind of been made. We don't know who it is.
Y'all see Pate posted he saw that.
Yeah. Pate said that he saw that they had SUVs coming into Tuscaloosa. So it's just.
Well,
if you put a gun to my head right now, I'm gonna go out. I think it's Schumann. Because did y'all see the post where DeBoer's supposed to be on a local Seattle radio show tomorrow in the morning?
I will say Sark was also supposed to be on that show before he left for USC, and he completely left them hanging.
You're right.
We might get a Tony Mitchell Bojangles story here, so who knows?
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. But yeah.
All right, well, it's about all the time we got for the Alabama coaching search. Thank y'all for watching. If y'all want to see more of this, subscribe for more. Noah will be a frequent visitor on this podcast. If not, become a straight up co-host with me and Will. Had a great time talking to y'all too. And we're gonna record the second part of this podcast right now, actually. Talking about the national championship. Peace out.